What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Never Lag for a totally different day and a totally different month. As you can tell by my hood being up, this is not the same day as October, about September.
As you can tell in my hood being up.
That was worth watching. Oh
It did
man.
harder than I thought it was going to be.
What are we doing here? What is this? This is welcome back to, we're starting to lose it. 2 podcasts in a row. Wait, never mind.
Don't give it away.
Yeah. I broke the illusion. We're here. We're going to talk about November, about October. You know, our really fun bit about what we call the episode gets so confusing when you're like,
we're doing them back to back
month. Yeah. Can't keep track of it.
Yeah,
Welcome so back to
normally.
I'm going to go back to September though. Put the hood down. We're here to talk about October, where we played more games inevitably. And Zach has even more than one to bring. So this should be a doozy of an episode. I'm one of your hosts, Levi, joined by the man across from me in one of these directions, Zach. And we are going to soothe your ears with the subtle sounds of video game discussion. So let us begin somewhere. You want to start? You want me to start? What do you want to do?
Well, I think we could start on Astrobot because it sounds like you bridged September and October with Astrobot. I played Astrobot.
I do have thoughts.
I actually think I did that too, but I primarily played it and finished it in October. And
when did Astrobot came out? Early September. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I started it at the end of the month and then mostly played it in October. So it's good stuff. So let's just dive into that. I really liked it. I think you also.
Yeah. So what would you give it out of 10? What would you give it out of 10 on the what would you give it out of 37 on the Neverlag scale?
You know, out of 37 on the Neverlag scale, this is definitely a 33.2. And I think everyone's going to be like, that's what I was thinking too.
About that point too, but
yeah, the 37-point scale is a little hard to fathom, mostly for me. So I'll translate that to the 10-point scale. I think this is kind of
encourage them.
This is kind of this is kind of in the 9 ballpark. And I could see some people who there's some people saying this is their game of the year, and I can understand that. And then there are some things that hold this back. And so if you said this was an 8.5, I would also understand that. Although I think it's around a 9 for me, or a 32.2 or whatever I said. 33.2.
Right.
Yeah. So what about you? What would you, before we get into all the specifics, out of 37?
Out of 37, I would give this a 33.2. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think you factually crushed the score on that. It's it's in the 90% range for sure. You know, people were discussing like this is a shoe-in for game of the year, which I think kind of comes down to whether or not Erd Tree qualifies, which I think it would have to, right? Because wasn't Cyberpunk's DLC nominated? Anyways, I think
so. If they're following that same logic.
Maybe it wasn't nominated for game of the year. Maybe it was nominated for something else. So if Erd Tree doesn't qualify, people were like, oh, this is a shoe-in for game of the year. Maybe that's true. For me personally, I'm fairly confident this will not be my game of the year.
I don't think it's mine.
Really enjoyed it, but I also feel like it lacked some depth. It lacked some edge to it that would have pushed it over the edge for me. And in the end, it just was a really good, fun game. So those are my surface level thoughts. I guess how do we begin to break this down? What did you think of because we've waited now 4 years. We've highly anticipated they've got to be making an Astrobot game with how well received and amazing Playroom was with the PS5 launch. Is this what you envisioned a full Astrobot game being?
Yeah.
Or was it,
I would say,
different in design, in how the levels, how you access the levels, the overworld map? Is this what you kind of pictured it being?
Yeah, I don't know that I had a picture so specific as like the galaxy level overworld, but I kind of envisioned like a Mario platformer that had some type of overworld where you'd go into smaller contained levels and play through them. So I
Sure.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's about the size I expected. Like this took, I don't know how long this took me, probably 12 to 15 hours, maybe. I platinumed it.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
15, we'll say 15. It was a decent length, like, cause the
15,
original
I think, would be on the
Astrobot,
long end, but yeah.
I platinumed it though. So yeah, but it was, so, 12 plus hours. Um, and I think the original probably took 3, like something like that. So it's a good 4 times the length of the demo that we got for free, which is a
Yeah.
respectable, I think it was a respectable length of a video game. Um, and it had a lot of similar platforming mechanics as the demo. Um, so yeah, I think by and large this was exactly what I expected, and I think they mostly hit it out of the park because, to be honest, I was worried that they weren't going to deliver. Like I was worried that Sony was going to do something to kind of mess that up, or that they were going to lose that vision, like that tech demo like had some spark that they wouldn't be able to hold on to, and I feel like they did hold on to that. And there is something to this franchise despite the slight genericism of it. There is a little spark to this franchise that works, and I think they captured and maintained that. One of the standouts from the original demo for me was the some of the attentions to detail, with just little delightful things in the world and in the environment, and how that interacts with like the haptics and on your controller, and just making use of all of the different features of the PS5. This one continues that, where you'll feel things in the controller that make you just feel more immersed in the environment you're in. And there's just a lot of really nice little textural things where like you'll be in a room where you can break apart all these, like you're in uh, like a 16-bit or 32-bit or whatever video game like level, and you can break apart all these little bricks and they just click and clack all over. And there's just a lot of satisfying little details that they
Yeah.
have throughout the whole experience that make it feel really polished and high quality and just a delight to play. And so I think ultimately
Hmm.
the delight
Yeah.
I felt playing the original, I felt playing here. There is some areas where I feel like they never went quite beyond surface level for some aspects that we'll get into. But ultimately, they delivered what I was expecting, which was a relatively high bar. And, if I get another experience like this in 3, 4 years that is of this quality and it's more levels, I will be very happy, even though I hope they go a little further with it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what about you? Based on your experience
I
with the original demo,
so
what do
I
you think?
I think what this game does best, like just 10 out of 10 best, is it's such a tactile experience, and that's really what part of what was so good about Playroom is it's one of the only games to truly be using the dual sense,
Yeah,
and it really does add new um a new element, a new layer to playing something when your controller speaker and the haptics and everything is doing all kinds of different stuff in your hand. It really does add to the experience. And also, this game genuinely understands how fun it is to have just a ton of like things on the ground that you're interacting, like marbles or
yeah,
leaves or whatever it is. It constantly is giving you something to like break apart, acorns, and just like hundreds of them will go spew out onto the ground, and then you can run around in them and like manipulate them and feel
hmm,
them interact with your character through the controller. Like that is so fundamentally satisfying visually and otherwise, and it constantly indulges in that. And I genuinely feel like more games should just understand how fun that is. Like it's just
yeah,
we're grown adults and we still like ball pits. I don't know, like it's something like that
yeah,
in your
yeah,
brain, or it's
yep.
just you want to swim around in a sea of tiny little objects. So um this game does that really well. And yeah, it is pretty much what I expected as far as design. And I overall really like the layout of the galaxies and the different, like the constellation of the galaxies shaping up the boss of the area. Um, Overall, I like the design. I like the hub.
Yeah,
I I wish I liked it visually a little better. I understand. I mean, they went with a desert and kind of different areas that you go to. It did feel a little bland to me.
I'd
Um,
agree.
but I was surprised, and I really thought it was a novel concept to have all of these bots that you're rescuing be, it almost had a Pikmin like aspect to it, where
Mm-hmm.
you actually see them coming back to the hub. You get to see them kind of set up camp, and also the items that you got in the first game felt even more impactful in this game because you get to get a little item for each bot that you rescue. Thematically, depending on what game they're from, they'll get some sort of weapon or backdrop or whatever it is for their little camp spot in your hub world, and that was really novel and cool. And then
Yeah.
getting
It kind of
to
felt like
actually,
you didn't just get it and they're in a menu. They're like running around
yeah,
and
you get to actually
you had
see it.
some,
Like I
yeah.
remember the little dude from Katamari Damacy, which is
Mm-hmm.
a very nostalgic game for me. I loved that game back in the day. You get his ball. And so before that, he's by himself, and then when you unlock it, he gets his giant ball, and if you
He's rolling
interact
it
with him,
around.
he can run over you with it and
Yeah.
pick you up.
Yeah.
And there's just really cool stuff like that, attention to detail, like you mentioned from the
Yeah.
Playroom game. And then I thought it was really cool when I realized that all these bots you're collecting, you can use them to reach new parts of the hub world
Yeah.
in
And that's the
very kind
Pikmin
of
like.
quirky, fun,
Yeah.
interesting ways. That's the Pikmin aspect, where it's like, oh, you need 30 of these to come create a walkway for you to walk up, or to hold up these pillars so that you can jump across or whatever. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they did a good job of making the bots and the coins that you're earning in the levels actually feel more worthwhile than just checking a box that you got them all. Like, you actually get
Yeah.
to see the bots, you actually get to see them with their items. It
Yeah.
felt a little more tangible in that way. So I love that
Yeah.
game design. Um, and yeah, it's tight, good gameplay. It's a little
Yeah.
simplistic, but it's really refined. It
Yeah.
feels really good to control Astrobot. Um, there were some of the abilities you get in the levels. I'm trying to go through all of the things I really liked before I talk about things I didn't. But the
Yeah.
abilities that you get, each level will kind of give you a random ability, whether it's like punching gloves or a backpack, a jetpack backpack.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought those were pretty much all really fun to use.
Yeah.
Uh, just
Yeah.
fun, just fun. This game does
Just fun.
fun really
And they gave
well.
you nice little environmental areas like with the jetpack backpack that like you can like burst through stuff or whatever.
Yeah, just
Or like with
satisfying,
the
like shattering a glass or
yeah, or like one of the glove. There's the glove where it like it shoots out and can connect to things, and you can use that to
yeah.
like traverse or whatever. So there is some fun
And
stuff
they
with
were
that.
able to take that and use it in fun ways in the environment, and then also the boss fights I thought were largely pretty fun.
The
I
boss fights I think
enjoyed.
were a bit of a standout for me in terms
I would
of
say so. Yeah,
creativity, design, and they weren't really hard or anything, but they were satisfying
but they
and
were simple and
unique.
satisfying designs
Simple, satisfying, unique, and they were all different, and they all
and slimy.
thematically, and yeah, they all just felt like once you figured out, oh, I need to go hit its weak spot here, or climb up this guy and do this. It was always fun to figure out, oh, this is what it wants me to do. That's fun, and then
Yeah,
it was also kind of like a set piece moment where they were big and in a very cute Mario way, kind of bombastic
it
and
very much had that old Nintendo charm to the boss fights too,
yeah, and they were all I
visually and everything. So
yeah, and I liked them all. I don't think there were any boss
my
fights that
my
were
last
really
big, like, the best part of
except
this
the last
game,
one.
and I do think, oh, sorry, I missed. What'd you say?
Like I said I think I liked all the bosses, and then I was like, well, except maybe the last one.
Oh,
We'll get to
yeah,
that.
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. The best part of this game, in my opinion, are the themed levels. Each galaxy has a final level after the boss that is curated and themed to one of PlayStation's IPs. Or are they all PlayStation IPs? I would assume so, but I don't
I
really
think
know
so.
anything about the blob. I don't even remember the blob
Yeah, the
world, but
one of them I didn't really
um,
recognize, but
these are, and some spoilers from here. I mean, I don't think we've spoiled anything. We've been generic to this point, but spoilers for the game if you haven't played it. There aren't a ton of spoilers to be had in this game, but I would say the themed levels are probably the biggest ones.
yeah.
The first one is Ape Escape, and I thought that was really cool because I have some nostalgia for that. I remember renting that from Blockbuster, and
Yeah,
that was just a
same.
cool kind of deep cut that you didn't expect right away. You're like, oh, that's
Yeah, it was kind of
interesting,
different. Yeah.
and it was fun to run around with the net and stuff.
Mhm.
And then from there you go to I think from there it's God of War. is the
I think
next
God
one,
of War is second. Yeah.
which you get the axe and you're running around, and they even took some of the like puzzle elements from God of War where you throw
Yeah.
the axe and it sticks, and if you leave it there you can traverse and then recall
Or
it.
freeze like a font of water or
Yeah,
whatever.
really
Yeah.
cool. Like that is just, they did such a good job with these themed levels. From there you go to Uncharted. That was a little bit less memorable for me, but you do get to run around shooting Drake, Nathan Drake's pistol, and doing
Yeah.
kind of an
And there's like
Indiana Jones
crashed
escape.
airplanes and stuff, and it was all right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. And then from there you go to the Blob, which I wouldn't even know how to look that up. I don't know what game this was, but you're a blob, and it was the most different. You're using the controller to like tilt the
Blob your
world
way.
and
Yeah.
move your blob around. It was fun. I wish I hadn't spent the entire time being like, what is this? I'm so disappointed this isn't something I know.
Yeah. Being so
Because
disappointed it's not Sly Cooper or Jack
oh my
Daxter.
gosh, don't even okay.
Then we'll
I
get to
need to
complaints in a minute. Let's finish talking about what we like. Yeah.
you just really stressed me out there with those. But if you just take that away from your mind, it was actually a really fun level. Really well
Yeah.
done, and a lot of fun. And then from there you wrap up with Horizon, which is maybe the best. It's up there with
It was
God of
cool.
War.
Yeah. It
They
was
did
good.
such a good job. The final boss sequence in the Horizon level where you're being
Mm-hmm.
chased by the giant
The big
um
T-Rex.
what are they called in the T-Rex, yeah. Um and
Well,
then
in
like
this,
the big I can't remember the name of anything. The big giraffe tower things that you get to
Tall
climb,
neck.
tall neck.
Yeah.
The themed levels in this game are I think the best part, and I just came away from it wishing, man, if there had been more of these, because they were special in my
Yeah.
opinion. So those are my favorite things. Is there anything favorite that stood out to you that I forgot to mention?
Mm, I don't. I don't think so. Um, I think some of the non-themed levels were still there were some really good ones still, and then some
There
were a
were a
little.
couple standouts for
There were
sure.
some standouts. Overall, yeah, just overall thoughts is that it was really fun. I liked it a lot. I think it is a really great game. I'm impressed with what they were able to do. I think that's one of those games where it's like this could have been such a cash in, such a like low effort, and it wasn't. Even though we're going to get into I think the
It's
amount of
highly
criticisms,
polished and well
highly
done.
polished, it's a really good game. The amount of criticisms we're going to go through is going to make it sound like we're harsher on it than we are. Again, this is in the 90th percentile still. It's really good. But I think those are a lot of the good
But that's
things.
why you come here, because we're cranky and we
That's
pick
right.
everything apart.
Old
That's the
men
most
yell at
fun.
video game. So that's what we're
Yeah.
going to do now.
Get off my
Um,
lawn. What's your biggest, if you were to give one constructive criticism to this game to fix for the sequel, what would it be?
oh man, I feel like there's two that immediately jump to mind, and I'm not sure which is more. I think probably the most fundamental criticism I have, and I think you're probably going to agree with me, is the combat and some of the mechanics are so simple and easy at times that it it's too simple and easy through and through, I think. And I get that like this is supposed to be kid friendly, but Mario games are kid friendly, and I think there is a little bit more of a challenge throughout a Mario game that you don't quite get here. And
Yeah.
part of that challenge is not just like difficulty, but it's also the skill ceiling of what you can do with your character. And so I think there is, even though this is a very polished game, this doesn't quite have the like precision tuned nature, the streamlined aerodynamic form of Mario and Luigi
Yeah.
Mario. You
And
know
you
what
know
I mean?
what's
Like,
interesting about, like, I'm hearing you describe, I feel very similarly, but it's almost hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, because I would say Astrobot controls very precisely. Like, I don't
true.
have
It's
an
not
issue with
precision.
controlling him, but as you said, there is no skill ceiling to controlling him. Whereas you look at like a recent example of Mario Odyssey is one I thought of a lot playing this game. Mario Odyssey is a very simple game. It can be played by almost all ages and beaten by almost all ages, but the skill ceiling on his abilities is very high. Like, you see people doing some crazy tech with, combining his throwing his hat and then his jumping and then his like dash, and you can
Yeah.
you can do some crazy stuff in Mario Odyssey. And it just feels like
There's
there's no
no,
way to compound his abilities or do anything
yeah,
beyond what they have given you. You
you're
can
right.
jump,
It does feel
you can
precise.
hover.
Yeah, it does feel precise, but there's nothing. It feels a bit surface level, other than the precision. And
Very
like you
surface
said,
level.
you can't compound a lot of your abilities, like your hover and some of these other things. There's no way to like, kind of uh mess just like through an empty space, because you
Yeah.
can work the
And to
game like
that
magic.
point, there are a couple levels where they kind of try to crank the difficulty up. Some like bonus little levels or whatever. They're shorter, maybe
I
30 to
loved
50
those actually.
seconds. And
Yeah.
those are very tough. I enjoyed them, but I also didn't find like that's to me where I realized, okay, there's something that needs changed with his skill sets and abilities
Yeah.
because just cranking the difficulty didn't work for me. It
Mm,
was kind of okay, but I also found it just kind of more annoying sometimes than fun.
yeah.
Um, and that's one of those things where it's really hard to define and really get into the code of like, why is this difficulty not exactly fun? Um, it sounds like you didn't have as much of
Yep.
an issue with those.
I liked those levels because it felt like they gave a challenge, and so I would have to try them a few more times, and they could be frustrating. I mean, Mario can be frustrating until you figure it out. I thought those were good, but I do still feel like there's something missing in your tool set almost, where it's like everything feels good and precise, but there's no way to
Like
stack
if
things
he had a
better.
dodge where he could dodge forward or like in the air he could jump, hover,
Sure.
then dodge. Like if
Yeah.
you can add something to kind of start chaining things together, because I mean,
And
does
moving through
circle do
space.
anything in this game?
Um,
I don't think it does.
is circle spin or is that square?
No, you hold square. I don't think circle does anything in this game,
Circle might not do anything. But I see what you're like. I think the way you traverse
which is
space,
kind of funny that
like three dimensionally, could be more interesting, because you mostly just jump, you hover, you can spin as well, but like it doesn't really change your trajectory, and that's kind of it. It would be cool if you could then like jump, hover, dash, or like it kind of adds
jump,
like
hover, hold square to do a spin and go higher. Like just something that you can
something that
combine
kind of
stuff
changes
together.
like, yeah, and makes you have to be a little bit more thoughtful and strategic if you want to pull off some really interesting maneuvers that you could then use for like the special challenge levels to really,
Yeah.
to really
So it's
pull
really
them off,
good. Movement is really good, but it's missing something. It's missing some
to
sauce
take it to that elite level. It's not.
to
I heard
really
some people say
keep it
this is on.
engaging.
Yeah, I had heard some reviewers say this is on par with Mario Odyssey, and it's not. And I think that's like there's a little secret sauce there that is missing, even though it's really
I think on the
polished and
surface
good.
it is. You look at it and you go, "Oh, these are both
Yeah,
really," but
a
when you
fun
play it for
level.
10 hours, you kind of start to see, okay, there's not
Yeah,
as much here to dig your teeth into. So, I
yeah.
would agree. What's your second one then? I'm curious what your second one was then.
My second one is, and you might have some version. I don't know how to say this exactly. I feel like while it
Try
incorporated a
words.
lot of PlayStation IP, um, it didn't always do it in a way that was like the themed levels were cool, but there was only a few of them, and there were
Right.
a lot of bots to collect, and some of those bots were from various IP, and that was cool. But here's my issues: like some of my most formative experiences with PlayStation have been Ratchet and Clank, Jack and Daxter, Sly Cooper. Some of these, I'm sure there's others other people are going to have, and I feel like I wanted a little bit more from those things out of this game, and that maybe
Here's
that's a
I think here's
sequel.
how to put it. Here's how to put it. They almost were too deep in their bag, like with a lot of these bots that you're rescuing. I think there too many of them were deep cuts. It's nice to have deep cuts,
Yeah,
but it feels like they were way too invested in their deep cuts and they kind of missed the mark on some obvious ones where it's like, okay, we got Ratchet, we got Rivet. Why do we have no other characters from Ratchet and Clank? We
yeah,
got Sly
like
Cooper.
Clank.
Why do
Yeah,
we have no other characters from Sly
yeah,
Cooper? Like
yeah.
we
Why
got
don't we have
Jack and
Murray
Daxter.
or whoever? Yeah,
Yeah, Franklin I think is was that his name?
yeah. I think Franklin's.
Turtle.
Well, no, that's the
I don't know
cartoon
if
for
that's
kids.
Turtlist. Is that Turtlist to think he's Franklin?
Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
nerdy turtle. I think his name's Franklin. I
Those
don't know.
those
But
turtles
point is,
all
yeah,
look
like
alike.
and then let's say, okay, you wanted to keep all your deep cuts, all your bots that have a wig and look exactly the same, and I can't tell what game they're from. You want to keep all those fine. Then take some of these other there were still like I mean, there had to be at least 100 bots, if not more, that were generic. Not
Yeah,
every bot you're rescuing is themed. A lot of them are just generic bots. it feels like they didn't hit enough characters from their main IP that really would make the majority of people go, oh, cool, over and over.
Right.
Whereas more often than not, I was rescuing a bot, like reading the text and being like,
Well, even
what are
if it's
you
someone I
from?
recognized, I'm like, okay, this is a bot with a little blonde wig, and I'm like, oh, that's the blonde lady from Uncharted. And then it's like,
Yeah, they're
but
just
I
not
guess,
visually distinct enough. Like
and
the
I
coolest
don't know,
bots were, I mean, Spyro looks exactly like, why does Spyro get to look exactly like
right?
Spyro?
Yeah.
Um, it just
Um,
kind of was all over the place with those. So,
so
anyways,
that the bots is part of it, but the other part of it is just like we got to play through a full level of God of War, which was really neat, and same with like Uncharted and Horizon. Not that I need a level for every, there's a limit to what they can do, but I just feel like there's a lot of IP that I just wish I had gotten something more infused into the experience. And maybe the answer to this is sequels. Like in a sequel, we're going to get a
sure.
Jack and Daxter
Yeah.
level, whatever. But it's like, I just feel like this was the promise of like this kind of sojourn through PlayStation history. And I feel like it was kind of scattershot, and like you got a couple of really more recent big franchises, and then some of these deep cuts, and then a lot of like more
Yeah.
generic Astrobot stuff. And it was all fun. It was all good.
It's not
I
super
just
fair to say this, but it does feel like we got 5 levels and a bunch of filler. Like if I were to be
good
really
filler,
reductive
but
and
yeah,
strongly worded, that's what it feels like a little bit, even though a lot of the levels are still really good and there's a couple that stood out and were memorable. When you leave the experience and you get something as good as the God of War themed or the Horizon themed levels, it kind of feels like you walked away with 5 levels and a bunch of filler. Is a little bit how it feels.
a little, yeah.
Um,
And this is kind of nitpicking because it's pretty good, but like, yeah, it feels a little bit that way. Um,
and to
and so
piggyback
yeah,
off of that a little bit, going into another critique I have is the layout. I kind of understand why they didn't want to have a galaxy themed, maybe because they didn't want it to get too repetitive after like 5 or 6 levels. But I also think the way they did it was not the answer, because it was
hmm
so eclectic and random that it felt exactly like that. I don't know how better to describe it. Like just going into a galaxy and it just felt so all over the place. And
yeah.
then
I
the other
mean,
problem is you would have a certain type of, this is the desert level. You would have in the next galaxy, you'd have another desert level. So it's just like they spread it out and
yeah,
randomly, it's like they hit a random number generator and
and just
just
kind of
threw the
put it there.
levels into the galaxies.
Well, it's tough because when you think about a hub world type game and you think about a different zone, in a good version of that, you can think, oh, this zone, these are the characteristics and the through lines and that's the memorable nature of that zone. And for, the zones in this are these constellations. And it's like, okay, the constellation is an octopus because you fight the octopus at the end. That's cool. But it's like, I could not tell you what levels are
Nothing
in
else is themed to that.
I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you any levels that are in that octopus theme. I'd have to go look. And
Yeah.
that kind of makes it, yeah, a little
Harder, less memorable.
less
I
cohesive,
think
less
I think
memorable.
much
Yeah.
better design would have been, and this is how Mario's done it forever. You have a desert themed area, you have a lava themed area, and I think it would have been much better if each galaxy, okay, this is the desert galaxy,
hmm
and there's going to be some variety within the desert, but they're all going to be desert themed. And I think what would even been better from there is if each galaxy had one ability, and they kind of introduce the ability in the first level,
Yeah.
and then they start to push that ability. What else can we do with this ability? And
All the
really
way to the boss
flesh out
fight.
that ability all the way to the boss fight, and then move on to the water themed gal. Like I think that would have been so much better
I think
than
the other
just this
thing
like explosion of random levels in every galaxy.
in line with that, what they could also do is then look at their IP and say, what are iconic, memorable desert levels across our IP that we can all factor into the desert galaxy? And so then you
Yeah.
play the desert in Jack and Daxter 2, and you play the desert in, this game or that game. That would be, in Horizon, that would be a really cool way to, like, you're traveling through all the different worlds of the IP and some of the unique Astrobot worlds, but they're all deserts and they can all be slightly different takes on deserts. And the IP helps change it up until you get to the boss fight with the through line of the unique ability as well. Like something like
Yeah.
that. Take notes. I don't know who made that. Sony.
I mean, we're
I guess
spitballing
just Sony.
some great ideas right here,
It's
but
pretty good.
yeah, I really do
Pretty
think
good.
that would have made I think the game design, um, the gameplay and everything is great, but I do think the game design, um, was just, I don't like the way they executed the randomness in the galaxies and the way that you can
Yeah.
pop into this one and it's completely different. themed, and you get a random ability in everyone too. So in this one I can slow down time, in this one I have a jetpack. That's fun, but it just lacks any sort of cohesion and just really fails to be memorable at the end
Yeah.
of the day. The only thing I remember are the final boss fights and the themed levels mostly.
Yeah. Same.
So,
Yeah. I think it really could have upped its game that way. I think that plus maybe some other depth to maneuvering if possible, and
and
maybe
this would
just
be an 11 out of 10 game
and maybe a slight curve on difficulty. Like I'm not asking you to make this super
for
difficult. I
each
get it's for
region or
kids,
whatever. Yeah.
but yeah, it's like you have to learn a little, and then maybe some of the bonus secret levels are, maybe there's a few more of those or something. But you do those things, and this is like you said, an 11 out of 10 game. As it stands, still like a 9 out of 10 or a 33.2 out of
Yeah.
37. So
But I will say that this is not going to be a popular take. I started out this game. I've highly anticipated this game, and I started it out being like, oh, I want to savor it. I don't want to beat it too quick. And it took me 2 months because I kept taking breaks and not really getting back to it. It got to the point where late in October, I was like, all right, I need to finish this game and get the platinum and be done with it. And it was more of a like, let me get through these final secret levels rather than let me savor them. And that's
yeah,
kind of astonishing to me from where my headspace was in my anticipation of this game to the end of a 12-hour ish experience, me being kind of like just getting through these
pushing
final
yourself to
levels.
get through it, even though it's fun. You had to like push
Yeah,
yourself a little bit.
everything's a
Yeah,
party, everything's fun, moment to moment gameplay is pretty fun, but just without that depth and some of these other things we've mentioned, it really just kind of was fun. It was okay. Like
yeah,
it didn't have anything that stuck with me. um so there's my hot take about Astrobot. Again, it's a really well made, um polished game, but I think the things that we've mentioned would go a long way to making
yeah.
it a Mario Odyssey level type thing. And I would
Truly a
honestly love to see
standout.
them.
Yeah,
I would love to see them kind of maybe even, they could do what we've mentioned here where you make it more themed and gradually explore an ability throughout a galaxy. Or I would love to see them take this and make it more Mario Odyssey, a little bit more. That's the other thing I felt was lacking, is there was really not any exploration in this game. It
true.
really felt a lot like going through the motions of each level. Each level's 5 minutes long maybe, and it didn't feel like there are a couple hidden things here and there, but it never really felt like exploring. It felt like just experiencing this fun party level that they had created,
Yeah,
and there is a lot of fun and attention to detail within that, but I do kind of need a little bit more exploration in these games, even though it's, I'm not asking for an open world game. I just want to feel
yeah,
like, ooh, what is that over there? What is that? So
yeah. Totally. I would agree with that as
there's a
well.
couple critiques. Oh, last thing, hated the design. I think we both hated the design of the final
Oh
boss.
god.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
They and you see him at the beginning, so
At the beginning. Yeah.
he's this like green alien, but I think I described him to Levi as like an alien sticker you'd get at the dentist as a kid that tells you to brush your teeth better or something.
So on
Where it's
point.
it's like this very
So
generic
juvenile.
yeah,
Generic
overly
and juvenile.
juvenile generic alien that it's just missing something. Like even you look at
Yeah.
like Mario, Bowser is kind of like a goofy antagonist, but there's a little bit of bite to him, and there's just something about him that is kind of fun and memorable, and this alien just felt way too forgettable
It
and
was
kind
the
of stupid.
most like placeholder
Yeah,
looking thing I've ever seen. And that's kind of a greater issue at large with Astrobot that I've heard other critiques of, and I have, is that the design of the characters and things can be very placeholder generic-y. And I
yeah,
think that the final boss of Astrobot is the pinnacle example of that. Like it is
yeah,
just I couldn't stand it. So that was
yeah.
kind of a bummer
I
because the
would say
final boss fight and sequence was really fun.
fighting him was fun. And like the mechanics
Yeah.
of it was it was a fun boss fight. It's just his design was not great. And yeah, I think Astrobot kind of suffers from this. It's kind of like when you're watching a TV show and then in the TV show they're playing a video game or watching a kids show, and it kind of felt like that. It's
Yeah.
like we're
It just
playing
makes me
Astrobot
think
fights the
too of
alien.
like
I'm like,
when you're creating a character, you go through, I mean, we've seen art concepts of characters where you go through like 50 different iterations. This feels like one of the first iterations that would be on the chopping block, on the floor 50 iterations from now you come up with the final design. It feels like they just went with the first one. That's kind of what it feels
Yeah.
like with a lot of these
Yeah.
designs. So I don't know. I hope they can kind of flesh out the world and the characters and make them feel a little more
Yeah.
unique and like they're like an IP instead of like. I mean, I love the fact that we're embracing PlayStation IP, but I also would
Yeah.
like it if Astrobot could stand on its own a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think its design right now is too far from being able to do that.
I agree. I
Um,
think their goal is to make it like a vessel where it's like this is neutral enough that we can put any of our IPs on these
yeah,
things. But the
but then
problem
how
is
far can
that
you take that?
how
Like,
far can you take it? And I think about another franchise that sort of does something like this is Kingdom Hearts, where you're going through all the Disney levels and you're having these themed connected experiences of all these Disney properties that are kind of disjointed in some ways. But the connective tissue and the characters and the storyline is convoluted as Kingdom Hearts is. At its core concept, there's something there of like, as a kid growing up, it was like Sora and Riku and Kairi and like the greater issues with
the game could hold its
and
own without the
Ansem and
other IP.
organization. Yeah, there's some things going on
Yeah,
where it's like it's got its own identity, even though it's got all this Disney stuff. And I feel like Astrobot does not really have its own identity, even though it's using all these IP. And I wish it could find a way to do that.
yeah, that would be great. So, I told my other hot take is I told my brother, I said, I really enjoyed this game, and, but it's getting a lot of hype. I think I enjoyed my playthrough of Sackboy's Big Adventure more than I enjoyed Astrobot, and I
I
feel
should
like
get to
that's a
Sackboy then.
really hot take. But I feel like they're both really good games, and I think Sackboy does not get enough appreciation for how. I wonder if Sackboy is just dead in the water, but I think I enjoyed playing through that game more. It also had co-op, so there's some things I know they're going to continue to use this. Even the DLC, I realized the other day they're doing time trial DLC.
Mm-hmm.
One of the bots I rescued was, I'm pretty sure, the Ghost of Yote. So they're using this very much as a vehicle for um, collecting new IP and announcements and
And
things,
promoting
and
other
promoting
games. Like
stuff, which is fun. But I would love to
and
see it be
yeah,
something that can do that, but also has its own thing going on
yeah.
too. So
I don't want it to feel just purely that it's again it comes back to the surface level thing. It's like
yeah, yeah,
make this something a little bit more. And I think they could. And I think there's enough passion in here. Like you can see the team enjoyed making this. So I'm hoping that they can
yeah.
push it further with whatever comes next.
Well, let us know if we're cranky or if you agree with any of our criticisms of Astrobot. It's probably both, right?
I'm
So
sure everyone agrees with us and is
there's
nice.
Astrobot. We'll see if it wins Game of the Year. Let's man, we got to crank through some of these. I've been playing Remnant 2 DLC with my
Mm-hmm.
brother. Um, there's 3 DLC. The third one just came out. We were waiting for all of them to be out to play them. We have now gone through the first 2. The first one is the Awakened King, which is in the Bloodborne looking area / universe. The second one is the Forgotten Kingdom, which is in Yeisha, more of the jungle fantasy area, and both have been excellent. Remnant 2 might be the pinnacle of co-op that I've ever played. I think just because it's recent in memory,
Yeah.
playing through the Destiny expansion in co-op, very fun, enjoyable. Playing through Remnant 2 in co-op is, I have so many recorded videos of shenanigans, hilarious stuff, super clutch moments and boss fights. Co-op Remnant 2 is just pinnacle gameplay. It is so good. The writing continues to be phenomenal. Like we pick up every book and I'll read it out loud. Between the two of us, we'll read everything. The characters you interact with, you want to go through every dialogue tree. There's secrets all the time. I found this item over here. I can take it to the end of the DLC, or there's that character in the beginning that we met. I feel like he would have something to say about this or would interact with this in some way. Let's take it back to him. Oh, it changed the entire course of the ending of the DLC. Like, this game is just quite simply phenomenal, and the DLC continues to be that. They did a really cool thing with this where you can play, because if you don't know, Remnant 2 is a third person action game. It's called Dark Souls with guns. It has a lot of similarities, but it's also semi procedurally generated, where whenever you do an adventure or a campaign, it will randomly generate a path, or like different, if you picture like a stencil, okay, this is Yeisha, it'll piece together certain objectives and things. And so in one playthrough, you may not get this objective, you'll get a different one.
Mm-hmm.
So with the DLC, they did something cool. They gave you a one-shot playthrough of each DLC. So for your first time playing through, you can play exclusively the DLC content for each of the 3
That is
regions
cool.
and not
Yeah.
experience any randomness or be like, oh, I missed out on this new piece. No, your first playthrough is all new content. And so that's really cool. And then after that, it gets cycled in with everything, shuffled into the deck, so to speak. Um,
It's a cool
don't
sounding
have too
game.
much more to add. But yeah, if you have any questions about it, it's so good. Yeah, you haven't played much of it, have you?
No, I played a little when it first came out, and I liked it. I was just had stuff going on, and I kind of missed the
It's
boat.
worth
You played
playing
it.
through solo,
Yeah.
but man, in co-op, it is just some of the puzzles too. This game has the best puzzles I've ever seen in a non-puzzle game. Like, it's not a puzzle
Wow.
game,
Yeah.
but the puzzles are so, it just nails that Indiana Jones, ancient crypt type puzzle vibes. And
Yeah.
there's even some puzzles you need 2 people to solve, so those are always really fun to find when you're in co-op.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, some of the best, like almost equally to, like we were talking about, raids and Destiny
Wow.
being just some of my
Yeah.
best memories. Some of these co-op moments, discoveries, clutch boss fights, puzzle figuring out puzzles together, these video clips I've saved are some of the best memories I've had in years in gaming. So
Yeah.
if any of that sounds good, you've got to play Remnant 2. I think this is the end as far as I'll report back with the final DLC. I've heard it's probably the best. I don't think there's anything more coming for Remnant 2. I hope that the studio continues to do this, whether it's a Remnant 3 or whatever. I would honestly love it. I kind of wish they would just continue Remnant 2 and keep coming out with
Mm-hmm.
new DLC for Remnant 2 and just keep this going, because I fear for what a sequel could change or get wrong. But man, I just hope they keep making. I hope the studio stays together, is successful, and keeps making this stuff, because it is peak of the industry for what this is.
Awesome. That game has me so intrigued, and I would love to play it. I don't know.
I know. I wish
If
you'd
and
have been
when.
tagging along for all of it, because it's just,
Yeah.
it's so good,
It sounds
so
dope.
good. All right, what you
Okay.
got?
So a game I started in October. I haven't finished it. I'm only like, I think I'm 2 boss fights in. Is Nine Souls,
Oh yeah,
Metroidvania,
I
kind of
can't
a
wait to get to that game.
Metroidvania with some Sekiro like elements. Um, it's got a really cool art style, and it's got a cool, I guess, setting. It's a sci-fi game,
What do they
sci-fi
called it?
fantasy
Like,
samurai, like
they called it something punk,
samurai
neopunk. I
neopunk.
don't know.
I don't fully know what that means, but it sounds kind of right, maybe. But I
Sounds
mean,
cool. That's got to be
it
it.
sounds cool. It's like you're a samurai dealing with like things, but there's also these sci-fi elements that are kind of interjected that are really cool. The story so far is pretty interesting. Like, there is a narrative to it, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes. The combat is pretty good so far, and like learning to parry things, getting that right. Like, a good parry system is always fun.
Does it feel
Um,
tight?
it feels pretty tight so far. I'm not super far
Tau
into it.
punk,
Tau punk.
combination of
Yeah.
Taoism and cyberpunk.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that
So these are
sounds
just
right, I guess.
initial impressions then, but initial
Initial
impressions are good.
impressions. It's cool. Yeah, I got it on Steam Deck. I've been playing it. It looks great. It feels really good. Combat's fun. Story's pretty interesting. Setting's really cool. So not a ton more to report at this point, other than I am liking it.
Cool.
And it feels unique too. Like, it, I think the problem with a lot of Metroidvania games is there's been so many of them that they can start to blend together. And there's been so many Souls-like or Sekiro inspired games that those can also, it's harder, I think, to have something that
To
makes them
stand out
unique
or
and
do
stand
something
out.
new.
And this feels like a fairly new thing as I've played it so far. So hopefully I'll make a
That's
little
the
progress on
impression
it.
I've gotten, and I've heard almost nothing but really, really high praise for this game. So this was one I always intended to play before the end of the year, and
Yeah.
I believe I will. So
Yeah.
we'll be able
It's
to
pretty
talk
cool.
about it probably November, December, I would
So,
think.
yep. So far that all tracks.
I want it
So,
on my list for game of the year. I want to
mhm.
be able to talk about it. So
Yeah. Okay.
okay, let me get through one quickly that I didn't love as much, and then one that I did. I played Plucky Squire because it was free with a PlayStation. I think just regular PlayStation Plus. It was one of the monthly games that was free upon release. Um, one I've looked forward to for years. I mean, we've been anticipating this game for years at this point. Finally got a release date. It's doing that whole. It's a storybook adventure game. It does the 2D to 3D switch back and forth, which we haven't seen a ton of. I'm trying to think of any game other than Odyssey that's done it, and I can't really off the top of my head. So it was a great concept in Mario Odyssey, and we kind of thought, oh, this is them turning that into a game. I can't wait. My disappointments with this game are, one, it is a little too simple and boring. It lacks an edge. It's very, very childlike in a lot of its premises and design and gameplay, to the point where I just don't know why you. It makes me think, why make a game for 4-year-olds? Because, I don't. They're not playing your game. Other people are, and if someone's
Yeah.
even 7 or 8, they're 7 or 8-year-olds are playing more advanced stuff than I'm playing now as an adult. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't see the point. I don't see your group that you're aiming for.
Yeah. It's not
But
an
I
iPad
understand.
game
I
for
understand.
4-year-olds.
Yeah, and I understand because it's a storybook adventure, so they're kind of playing off of that, reading a bedtime story premise. So I get it, but I was bored, and I found myself pressing to finish this game. And just a few chapters in, I kind of wish I'd have just quit. But I wanted to see, could this go anywhere further? Could this get a little more interesting in the gameplay department? And the other problem I had with it is that the percentages of, basically, you're in a book, a physical book on a table, and you're
Mm-hmm.
playing a lot in this book and turning pages, and 2D top down, is a lot of the gameplay. I would say 75% of the time you are in the book, 2D top down. That's your gameplay. And, maybe 10% of the time you're popping out of the book and exploring the desk, the 3D open world. And then, whatever's left over from there, maybe 10 another 10
15.
15% of the time you are switching back and forth, not necessarily exploring the desk, but using your ability to hop out of the book and turn pages to solve puzzles and different things. And I just think there should have been way more of those last two. That Those are the most interesting parts of the game, when you're in 3D exploring the desk, popping in and out of like sticky notes or pieces of paper on the desk
Yeah. See,
to
that's what sounds
to
interesting.
traverse. Like, that is what was exciting about this game, and there's just not enough of it. There's like
Yeah.
maybe 10 to 15% of this game you're doing that. Too much of it is spent in the book, just kind of 2D. And then the flipping the pages, solving puzzles is also decent fun. So um they needed to switch those percentages. I needed way more of 3D and just kind of popping into 2D to solve puzzles, but mostly in 3D, I think would have been a lot better. I don't know how you design the game that way based off of playing it. Like, I think this is a very complicated game to make. I can see that. And I can see some of the limitations maybe they came to, or like, how do you design this game in chapters or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just, at the end of the day, it was okay. I wouldn't really recommend it. I found myself kind of bored. If you're okay with really cozy, simple games, this is a cozy storybook type of game. You might enjoy it, but it was a little too dull for me. So,
How long did it take you to complete?
oh, it was probably, it's an 8 to 12 hour game. It's
Okay.
in that
And you
normal range.
had to push yourself to
Yeah,
get
and I
through it.
found myself after probably about 3 or 4 hours being kind of like, I should have stopped in hindsight. And I
Yeah.
kind of knew it. It was one of those games where I know I should stop, but I'm like, I'm
Maybe
still
it'll change. Yeah.
curious. Let me
Yeah.
see. Yeah. So
I think the big thing
I
for
would,
me is the
it's a 6 out of 10.
oversimplified stuff is, I wish it was. What's crazy is, like, I'm growing, like, we have Mario games for kids, and it's like those are very kid friendly, but there's something to them, and so something that is too easy, too childish,
Yeah.
and then
I mean,
also
it
the
goes back to
percentages.
even Astrobot. Like, something just needs, and
Mhm.
obviously not the same. I'm just trying to connect threads here. Games need an edge, they need some depth. The reason we play games is to overcome something, to figure
Yeah.
something out. Like, the interactivity and the challenge, whether it's minor or major, is why we play games. And when a game errs too far to
Hmm.
just kind of going through the motions, you're just going to lose me especially quicker. I need that more
Yeah.
brain engagement, cerebral
Yeah.
engagement. So
Yeah.
that's where I
That and
landed with that.
the percentages, like for me, is kind of the Toy Story running around the big things in the room and then being able to, like you said, jump in and out of a sticky note or like running around a mug and then going into the book. That all sounds really cool. So to
Yeah,
hear you're mostly just in the book on the page
100%.
feels like
And
not
those
like
and
it's
those
a
are cool.
betrayal of the promise, but it sounds like it's
Yeah.
weighted
And those
wrong
moments
for what
are really
you want.
cool. Like on the desk, there's sometimes like giant mugs or something that you can hop
Yeah.
into and like work around the mug. And it's just, those are really cool. There is something here. It's a great gameplay idea. It just isn't fully delivered on, in my opinion. So,
Yeah. What would you
um,
give it out of the 37-point scale?
37, I'd give it a 23. That sounds about right,
23.
right? I mean, we're
23.
50%. It's a pretty game.
That's a
Technically runs well.
62%. Yep, that sounds
Yeah,
right.
that's how I feel.
Our
So
percentages are on
there you have
point
it.
today.
It's funny how you can pick a number out of 37 and it's probably percentage
Yeah,
wise what you'd agree with,
yeah,
even though you couldn't tell yourself what the percentage is exactly.
I
So,
know. Okay,
let me do one more since I have a couple, and I think you
go ahead.
have one I really liked is Humanity. This is one I played
Oh
a couple
yeah,
hours
yeah.
of way back when it came out. This was a PS Plus game as well. Came back to it, um, finished the game, and this is a phenomenal. Like this is up there with one of my favorite puzzle games of all time, and it's
Wow.
the thing that's so cool about Humanity. Man, I think this game went under the radar. I'm sad that I don't think it got enough attention. Which again, puzzle games are kind of niche to begin with. But
Yeah,
what's so cool about this game is that it's not just a puzzle game. It is doing so many other weird things. It is just weird, and I don't know how else to
that's
describe
intriguing.
it.
I love that.
Like you're some of it is very puzzly. You are solving a puzzle, and it feels like you're solving a puzzle. Other times it's more like tower defense puzzle. Other times it's more like um, leading, like Pikmin, like leading your troops around.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's like real time puzzle and like some stealth. This game is just a weird combination of things that I don't think has ever been done or put together. It does them all well. Um, the puzzle difficulty I think is really really good. At almost at no point was it super stumping. Like um, most levels can be solved in 10 to 15 minutes, and but there was one or two that got me, and I think that's just right. And puzzles are so hard to get right for different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, different attention
There's some
spans or
subjectivity and
intelligence or
also
whatever. Yeah, and
yeah, and different
also
brains
not
work
even
different ways.
intelligence.
But,
Sometimes just something will click for someone and it won't for
mm-hmm.
others. It's very hard and subjective, so I can't speak to everyone's experience. But the one that stumped me, I sat there for like 2 to 3 hours trying to solve this puzzle, and I was just like, there is no way. And the other thing that's cool is that you can solve a puzzle fairly easily, but if you want to complete the puzzle and get everything, before you exit, that's where it's an optional difficulty, and that's what I was trying to figure
Okay.
out. And it was just, there was no way. And I had to get up early the next morning, and I was up till 11. I meant to go to bed at like 9, and I was like, I have to go to bed. And I'm one of those, I'm like, I can't go to bed if I don't solve this. So that's why I stayed up till 11,
Yeah.
went to bed. Laying in bed half an hour later, in my brain I had spent so much time with the puzzle that I was able to like map it out. In bed I solved the puzzle, and the next day after work I came back, did the thing, and it worked exactly like how I thought. And it
I
was
think
just
that's
such a
the
cool
sign of a good
moment.
puzzle that you're
Oh, it
able
was
to like
so good.
mentally go through that, come back, and then solve it.
There are boss fights in this game.
Oh,
weird
interesting.
weird boss fights that sometimes are puzzles, sometimes are more real-time action. And then the aesthetic of this game, the sound design and aesthetic of this game is so completely unique, and I totally vibe with it. It's just got this really like surreal but also clean and simple art style. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. But yeah, the premise is you're a dog, you're a little tiny dog, and you got a big top down view, and you're running around telling people where to go, almost like roller coaster tycoon type people, telling them where to turn or where to jump, or and you're solving puzzles. And it's just, if you like puzzle games, or you like just interesting ideas. This game melds concepts together that I feel like I never would have guessed you could meld together, and it does it
Mm-hmm.
seamlessly. The final boss fight was actually really cool, like just an awesome ending to this game. Um, what a surprising game. So I would give this a 37 out of 37. I loved it.
Wow.
And
Yet
if
another
you like puzzle
game.
games, go check this out.
We got to stop talking because every time we do, I have like 6 games that I add, and I'm just catching up from 2022 here. So,
I know, dude. I was
I'm
thinking, I was like, man, other than Witness, I think this might be my favorite puzzle game of
wow.
all time. And like, you want to play it with earphones or headphones or whatever, because the music and the sound design is so part of the experience.
Yeah,
It's really,
love
some
that.
people came together and made a really weird game, and they did it perfectly, and everything flows together somehow. So
Did you play it on PS5?
yeah, I did.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I don't know if
Well,
it's on PC. It might be.
okay. I'm
I don't know.
intrigued by that. All of that sounds so good. I love weird stuff. I love weird stuff.
That's what I've been craving lately, is like
Yeah.
weird, interesting ideas. I think that's why I've been playing so many of them. So,
Yeah. Cool. Oh,
all right,
that
what else are you
sounds
doing?
awesome. One other game that I started, but I'm still fairly early on in, is Inscription, the deck
Ah,
builder
okay. Yeah.
horror.
Speaking of weird,
Speaking of weird, that's one I watched you play the first hour or so, like 2 years ago, maybe maybe a year or two ago, and was fascinated by it. And then I bought it on PC before my PC died because I killed it and was not able to revive it.
because I killed it.
And my PC has been non-functional for a while. So but I bought it on the Epic Game Store, I think, on sale, which I don't have access to on my Steam Deck and haven't quite figured out how to make work. So it's not something I can just easily play on my Steam Deck. So I haven't played it, but I can't remember. I think I got it on sale like a month ago. I think I got it for like $5 or $6 on PlayStation. So I was like, oh, I'll throw $5 at it and just start playing it. Um, and it's pretty good. The deck building is really cool. There's such a dynamicness to that game of like things changing and evolving that it's not just a deck building card game. Like it is, but it isn't. And there's such
It's like living.
it's like
There's so much
a
more going
living.
on than meets the eye.
Yeah, and it kind of there's this aura of darkness and mystery, literally and figuratively, as this weird, creepy guy you're playing cards with, who's very threatening, is talking to you and like walking you through the game. But then
It feels
also
like if
like
Jigsaw was really into card games,
that's a great way to put
you
it.
know?
Yeah, you're trapped in this weird cabin in a storm, playing cards with this guy who's just in darkness and he has these weird swirly eyes, as
Right. And
this
you're
living
clearly
card game.
he's your captor. Like you are
Yeah,
not there by choice. So
and you're trying to escape through the card game and through things that kind of start, and you start to get outside the card game and you go interact with the cabin, and it kind of all starts tying together. And then, to go along with good music and sound, mainly sound design, I'd say for this one, the sound design just adds so much atmosphere and
yeah, it's
ominousness
very
to the,
encompassing.
yeah, and it makes you
It's,
feel
it's good.
oppressed and creeped out while enjoying this game. Really cool. I plan to continue and hopefully finish it relatively soon. Um,
Yeah,
Very
man.
unique experience. We need more games
I
like
can't
this. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts as you get further into this one as well. Yeah, literally speaking of weird games, if you like weird, unique experiences, if that sounded good in humanity, this is like the poster child of that, because it's almost impossible to describe this game.
Yeah.
The best way is it's a deck builder, kind of. If you like card games, you will enjoy this game. But if you don't necessarily play, Balatro came out this year. If you don't necessarily play like strictly card games, but you kind of enjoy them, you will definitely like this game, because it's not just that. There's more
Yeah.
going on. There's intrigue. There's mystery. There's kind of like one of the games that came up, because the reason this is so fresh in my mind is my brother was over recently, and I was like, we were in that place like, what are we going to do for the couple days while you're here? What are you going to play? And I was like, dude, just play 10 to 15 minutes of Inscription and let's see. Just play it. And he was like, no, I don't like when you just like, oh, don't pick a game, and I'm not in the mood. And I was like, just play 10 to 15 minutes of Inscription, and then we can figure out what else we're doing if you don't want to play more. He played the entire time he was here, beat the game over the course of 2 or 3 days,
Yeah.
became just obsessed with it.
And then sent like
And it is one of those
a 10
games.
minute audio message to us talking about it. So
Exactly.
I'd say it was
If
a
you
hit.
spend 10 to 15 minutes in this game, you will be hooked. Or this game isn't for you, but 99% of people will be hooked in this game. It is
I was
weird.
hooked.
It
Watching you play
draws
the
you
first
in,
hour, I was like, I have to experience this. And the
and
only
it
reason I haven't is
goes
because I,
weird
yeah,
places.
I can't
Yeah,
wait.
the game that came up when we were playing it, I was like, dude, this has Control vibes at moments. There's some
Interesting.
Control energy going on here. So if you
Yeah.
look at the game and you think, how is that possible? You got to go play it. So, super weird, impressive indie game with moments and twists and turns that will stick with you.
Yeah.
And it is not just what you see in the first 10 to 15 minutes. It is very good. So
Nice.
there's my quick little spiel. I can't wait to when we'll have to have a spoiler discussion once you get further or beat the game in some of these coming months, where we can talk about the insanity of this game.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
That tricks one off for me because I was going to bring it up because I actually replayed the ending of Inscription after he left because it had been long enough. I guess I forgot, and I was just kind of blown away at um, what an impressive and weird game it is to be made
Yeah.
by assumedly one person, maybe just a really small team. It's amazing what people can do these days
It really is.
with
And I think
with a
that's
really small team.
we hear all the doom and gloom about the gaming industry, and it is frustrating. And I like some of the big budget experiences, but more and more, it becomes clear these things are the future of gaming and will keep things fresh and functional. And,
Fresh, yeah, absolutely fresh. That's the key word. Things get stale, and this is where you're finding fresh
yeah.
experiences. So, um, I bought Mario Party Jamboree. It's the first time I jumped into a Mario Party in
Oh, nice.
many years since.
What do you think about it so far?
So I was vastly disappointed by the one that was like 2 entries ago. I don't remember Super Mario Party or whatever. I was just
Mm-hmm.
so annoyed at the lack of control you have over the rules. And I felt like there was bare bones content, just a couple maps. It just was really disappointing to me. And I saw some reviews saying you could tweak some rules in this one that kind of spoke to me, and that it was more of a fleshed out full Mario Party. So I've been enjoying it. I still have some complaints. I really just, for starters, not all the maps are available at the beginning. You have to like play a bunch to unlock, almost like a battle pass type system to unlock more maps. And I'm
Don't
just
love
like,
that for Mario Party. I don't love that.
there's a bunch of like ancillary islands you can go do random stuff at, which granted I haven't spent a ton of time with, but the one I did was like, maybe we shouldn't have put time and resources into this. Maybe we should have just had another map. Or like, I really think Nintendo needs to just lean into like the Mario Kart 8 vibe for this. They need to just make
Keep releasing maps.
a bunch of maps, a bunch of rules that you can tweak, a bunch of
Bunch of mini games.
characters, a bunch of mini games. Just keep growing it. Like,
Because that's
I
all
just want
Mario
to hop
Party
in
is.
and
Yeah.
play Mario Party. I don't
Yeah.
want to deal with your like narrative. I don't want to unlock stuff. I just want to hop in with friends and play Mario Party. This is better than it was. Still not great. So that's kind of my review. There is an option now it's called Pro Rules, which removes a bunch of the randomness, which I get can be kind of kooky for a party game, but it's also really frustrating when it's like at the end, 5 bonus stars are given to everyone for random stuff, and then the person in last place is in first place. So you can tweak a few things, and we had fun playing it. It's a fun party game for what it is. I wish Nintendo would really lean into it and make it more like a Mario Party 8 type thing. But other than that, yeah, we did some Inscription. I've been playing Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and I tried to finish it before we recorded this. I'm getting close. But the TLDR on that is that it's excellent. Honestly, it's better than I thought it was going to be.
Nice.
It was almost one of those games where I kind of was like highly anticipating it and then maybe never bought it or never played it. But I ended up starting it, and I didn't love Link's Awakening Remake. I did not have the nostalgia because I never played it back in the day. And I didn't love kind of the plastic cutesy art style that they went for with that. But more than anything, I think Link's Awakening, the remake, just kind of showed that as much as that holds up really well for how old it still is a very dated game in design and world and everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't terribly memorable to me. I didn't enjoy it. This literally, it is the modern version of classic Zelda. it is, it feels, in so many ways it feels like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. They've taken elements of that 3D modern Zelda and incorporated it into the classic top-down Zelda, and it
Mm-hmm.
works so well with Zelda's ability to create mimics of like all echoes of all kinds of different things and solve environmental puzzles or combat in any number of ways that you might decide. And then even just like stuff where um, the way elements interact, like you can use fire to melt ice in the world, and just there's a lot of modern concepts that have been brought to this classic formula. And the map, the world is pretty big and fun to explore. It feels like you're really exploring certain areas. Each zone of Hyrule, the map is very similar to Breath of the Wild's Hyrule. Each zone has a very memorable cast of characters and like quirky things that are going on, that you solve in each region, and they've been very fun and Nintendo like. I think this is easily between a 9 and a 10,
Wow.
between a 9 and a 10 out of 10. Um, so, I
You
mean, if
mean
you like
between a
classic Zelda, if you like
33.2 and a
modern Zelda,
37?
between a 34 and a 36.
Wow. Well, okay.
33 is, it's up there. I really have been enjoying it. I don't know if you have any questions about it, but yeah,
I don't know
I've
if I have
been
any
thoroughly
questions,
impressed.
but I'm excited to play it. Because initially, I do have a little bit of nostalgia. Like I played Link's Awakening on Game Boy Advance or whatever back on the day, and back in the day, and I played some, like I didn't play all of the old Zeldas like on Super Nintendo or whatever, but I played some of the Game Boy Advance Zelda games that were 2D. And so there's a little nostalgia there, but at the same time, it's not my preferred format for Zelda. Like I prefer the 3D. I guess these are technically a little 3D now, but you know what I mean. The more 3D
Right. Yeah, totally.
type entries into Zelda. Um, but that being said, I was intrigued by the concept, and then the idea that you have these abilities, kind of like in Tears of the Kingdom, where you can manipulate your environment and your enemies. And from what you've said and some of the reviews I've heard, that um, there are a lot of ways to solve things, kind of like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, where mainly Tears of the Kingdom, where your abilities can be used in depending on your creativity to do things in different ways, and they allow for that type of problem solving. That's really fun. It's always
Yeah,
like every time you watch me play Tears of the Kingdom, it's fun because I'll solve something in what makes sense in my mind, and then you're like,
the
"That's the
most
stupidest way
insane
I've ever."
way
That's
possible.
what is yeah. You need to talk to somebody because that's such a
Yeah,
yeah.
that happens all
And
the time in this game. There's,
love it.
and the other thing is, it kind of creates this cool, almost like Pokemon esque feel of like anytime you encounter something, a new enemy or a new object, you're like, ooh,
Yeah,
let me get that as an echo. Like, I wonder what I can
yeah,
do with
that makes
that,
sense. Yeah,
and that's really cool. And then you come to an environmental puzzle or whatever, and it's like, if you can roll through your Rolodex and think of all 150 of your echoes, one of these would solve this really easy. Or you can hodgepodge like six
couple
together
together.
and have the most ridiculous solution
It's
that's
just a
way
yeah,
complicated and barely works.
and
So
yet is
it
maybe
does
more
that really
satisfying
well.
that it worked. Yeah, it's cool.
Right, yeah.
I do plan to play that. I'm kind of it'll tie into my very last note is that I'm currently finishing up Tears of the Kingdom. So I got to finish that first, but I do plan to play Echoes of Wisdom. I don't know if I'm going to do it this year or not. We'll have to see, but I plan to pick that up soon-ish because I love that style of
Cool.
gameplay and I love that
Yeah, well,
style of
once you do,
Zelda. So
we can talk more in depth. We can get into spoilers about it. I just didn't think I would be able to enjoy a top-down classic style Zelda this much. I'm impressed at how much they've been able to bring it. Um, oh, am I still here?
oh,
Am I still
looks
here?
like you're back.
Okay. I've been impressed at how much I'm able to enjoy a classic Zelda. They've brought it into the modern age. It works so well. It's so
Nice.
great on the Switch. And I would put this, my little cartridge, I would put it just underneath a Mario Odyssey and a Breath of the Wild. It's in that tier
Wow.
right below it, and it's near the top. So
Amazing. Well, in that case, I'll have to play it. I was planning to, but hearing that endorsement from you, especially as someone who is not as keen on that style of Zelda, that goes a long way, and I'm excited to play it.
it's really good. It's fulfilled my childhood fantasy I never got to have of cutting the grass in an old Zelda game.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
pretty good. That's
It's
one of the
so
best
good.
parts of the
It's
old
just
Zelda
as
games.
good 30 years later, man.
It
I never
is.
had a Nintendo back then, and I always envied
Yeah,
all y'all playing these top-down classic Zeldas, cutting the grass, and little gems come out, and
there's nothing
we're
like it,
still doing
to be
it here with
honest.
Zelda, with actual Zelda here in 2024. So
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom? Are you like
Um,
you've done 2 or 3 of the
I've
main
done
objectives?
I've done 3 of the dungeons. The last one that I have not done is the Gerudo Desert area, and
Ooh, that's a good one.
I saved it for last because you said it was the best, and that's the last region on the map that I have to fill out. I have every region filled out on the main level
That's where
and the
Bay
sky
lives.
level. Right, exactly. And then I'm I'm currently mapping out the underground area, the whatever it's called, the gloom, the underdark.
The
Um,
gloom, yeah, I don't
and I would say
the
I'm about
depths.
the depths. That's what it is. I'm about 75 to 80% explored in the depths. So I was like, I'm just
Wow,
going to
that's
try and
quite a bit.
I've done a lot. I've been doing that almost exclusively for the past like 4 or 5 days, and
It's a
I'm
lot of
loving it.
depths.
And I'll occasionally go up and like to the Sky
Take
Islands,
a breather and head up to the yeah.
or like if my heart starts to get low, instead of healing with food, I'll like look on, because I finally figured out, it took me forever, but I finally figured out that all the light routes are exactly where shrines are on the main level. Um,
Dude, I didn't even know that.
yeah,
Really?
every single light route is directly beneath either a shrine or a tower.
Oh, there's some lore crap going on
The
there.
other the other thing I finally realized, and this one was from Brandy who told me this, is that um, everything that is an ocean or a lake on the upper level is like an impenetrable wall or like a mountain in the Underdark. So
Oh,
you can't pass. So if you're stuck and you're trying to figure out how to get somewhere in the depths, if you look up at the map and see like how the
dude, that's
land connects
crazy.
through the water, you can find and chart your passage. And she just told
That's
me this
so
like two
good because
days
it's
ago,
genuinely hard to figure out where to go sometimes in the depths.
especially in the dark, and it's like visually, and it's the depths are all over the place. We'll talk more when I finish it. Man,
Dude, that's
it's really
crazy.
good. And so that
That's
kind
what's
of
so
becomes
good
like
about
a
the game
compass
too
in a
is
way.
that yeah, yeah. What's so good about that is you can spend like a day or two in the depths and then it's like, all right, I need to change. And then you go up to the Skylands and it's just a different,
Such a
completely
different
different
vibe.
vibe, completely different game. And it's all seamless. Oh,
It's all seamless.
best
And
game
then
ever
you
made, some people would say.
I think it might be, because then you jump back down straight into the depths, or like
Skydive
again,
into,
instead
oh
of like
man.
cooking food lately, when my heart starts to get low from exploring stuff in the depths, I'll be like, okay, let's look at all my light routes and see if any of those don't have shrines above them on the main map, because you can
Oh,
just
and
like
then go
toggle
find a
your map.
shrine.
And I'm like, okay, so there should be a shrine
That's
right here.
fascinating.
So then I'll teleport around there and like find the shrine, do it, fill up my hearts, get a little bit of a different gameplay loop, and then maybe go up to the Sky Islands, grab a few
It's
ingredients or something, then
it's
dive through the hole in
incredible.
the earth.
This game has like a dozen gameplay loops and they all seamlessly work
It's
into each other.
a master
It's
class.
amazing.
For a long time I kept thinking I don't think it's going to top Breath of the Wild because of that like first
Oh, it just
impression,
does though.
but I think this is the best game I've ever played.
I
I
had the
think,
same thought, but it is just so fundamentally better and builds upon everything Breath of the Wild does,
yeah,
like
it's
times
just
infinity. It's crazy.
it's a masterwork of video games again
Hmm.
and again and again, and like you said, all in ways that all work together, and it's crazy. So
And it
loving it.
needed to be to surpass Breath of the Wild because, like you said, that first
Yeah,
impression is so strong, and I have such an affinity for Breath of the Wild. This had to be an impossibly perfect game to beat it, and it is.
it
It
is.
just
It's
is.
so
So,
good. It's
are
so
you?
so
Have
good.
you collected all the tiers yet?
Not all of them. I think I have like 12 out of 16, somewhere around there. So I've
Okay.
collected, and most of the ones I
Oh,
don't
you're
have are
getting
near the
close.
end. So I've been
You're
trying
getting
to do it
close.
mostly sequentially to like kind of get it. So yeah, I'm close. My plan is to finish exploring the depths for the most part. Then do the Gerudo area in that fourth dungeon. Um, Finish out my tiers to get the rest of the memories, and then I'm sure that'll lead me into the whatever the
All right. I
climactic
cannot
sequence is.
wait
It's
in
so
the
good.
next month or so to hear once you have done the dungeon in the desert and you have done the quest following the tiers.
Yeah.
I feel like you're already gushing. I can't wait to hear
I can't
and be
wait.
able to talk about what
I've
comes
almost
next. So,
exclusively been playing that. So I'm
yeah.
excited.
All of these
Very
games I
excited.
mentioned were amazing and you should play them, but don't touch a single one of them until you finish Tears of the Kingdom. So,
Yep. And I'm the nice thing, like part of it was like I need to just finish this game because I've been kind of coming back to it, partly because I don't want it to be over. Like I hate the idea of not having this. Um,
yeah.
but in the way these games are, I was like this with Breath of the Wild too, is like it's not necessarily you can drop in and out and live in this world for so long and it works. But at the same time, I've now pulled in enough that I'm like, I really want to finish this before the end of the year to know how I feel about the whole experience and the ending. It's really
And
good.
this
And I
one
definitely
has
will.
narrative moments that hit if you're not if you are in it, you know.
Yeah. And
It's
I'm very
worth being in it. Whereas
in.
Breath of the Wild was just kind of like a place to be, and it was magical for being perfect for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you necessarily needed to be in the headspace and like been deep into playing Breath of the Wild to enjoy it. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like it has strong story moments that
Yeah.
hit so hard if you're into it, you know. So
And I am. Well, now I'm trying to
worth it.
like I'm excited to see what's going on with everything. So
Oh,
super good.
sweet.
I'm very confident I'll finish this in November. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we will have a lot of spoilers to talk about next month then. So thank you. I guess that'll end it. Thank you for joining us for November about October and all of our escapades through the virtual space of video games. We will be back in December about November. So please look forward to it, as Nintendo would say. And
Please look forward to it.
please look forward to it. We'll catch you next time.